Right, welcome everyone. So I think that video really set the tone nicely for why we're all here. So welcome and thanks to you all for being part of the Dive-In Festival 2023. To those of you that are logging in online, a big welcome to you guys as well. We're absolutely thrilled to be hosting this event this year in Delta HQ here in Auckland. Just quickly, I just want to cover off a little bit about Delta because there will be people on the call that don't know who we are or familiar with what we do. So we are a Lloyd's cover holder. We are headquartered here in Auckland. We also have an office in Christchurch. We trade out of Australia and Singapore as well. We are a disruptive business selling niche insurance products. We're a team of specialist underwriters. We're delighted to be part of this festival through our association with Lloyd's. So a little bit on me. I'm an underwriter here and team leader. And I'm going to be the moderator tonight. So I'm going to quickly just pass over to the two people I have here sitting next to me who are part of our panel. So we have a panel of four. And Margot, do you want to do an intro on you?
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everybody. I'm so delighted to be here. My name's Margot Ward. I'm actually founder and CEO of a children's mental health organisation called Kids Express, which is based in Australia. But I'm so delighted to be here to be in the Dive-In Festival for the insurance industry, because the insurance industry has been a force behind the creation of Kids Express. So really standing up for what they stand for in terms of supporting people when they're most vulnerable. So I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
Nice. So my name is Raina Bogdanovic. Some of you already know me. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called First Response Health. So we work with a number of corporates, including Delta and many other insurance organisations, to support them with their mental health. And I'm finding that the insurance industry, although some areas are in their infancy, many are doing incredible things in the space of diversity, inclusion and equity. So I'm very, very excited to be here also. So thank you for the invitation.
Awesome. And yes, we have two of our panel actually sort of logging in as well. So I'll pass over to you, Fiona.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. So I'm an occupational therapist and founder of the Rehabilitation Specialist. So we work across the workplace rehabilitation and NDIS spaces. For those not in Australia, NDIS is the National Disability Insurance Scheme, so working with people with disabilities. I have lived with profound deafness since I was 3 years old. And also have an invisible acquired neurological disability from 2 years ago. So I have a lot of first-hand experience of the critical importance of diversity and inclusion. So being here today is really important to me. At the Rehabilitation Specialist, we don't just talk about diversity and inclusion. We try to lead by example and inspire other workplaces to look beyond potential perceived barriers and recognise the immense potential that people do have. So my contribution today to the conversation is from the perspective of diversity and inclusion for people with disabilities, ill health, or those recovering from injuries. So thanks for having me.
And Ryan.
That leaves me. Hello, my name is Ryan McCrory. I'm the founder of Ixona, a company that supports organisations with their culture, their well-being and employee experience. I'm really excited to be here today. It's a topic I love, something I've supported organisations with a lot in recent time, developing strategies and doing some employee experience design work. And I love that it's an area that we're discussing more and more in business, because I think it's leading to better experiences and better workplaces and better cultures. So thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the talk today and also learning from the other panelists.
Awesome. All right, thanks guys. Super excited to get this underway, and literally, like, excuse the pun, we are just going to dive right into it. But yeah, just I guess a bit of a history. So the festival has been running since 2015, and there has been a few different themes over the years. It's grown from something quite small to something really quite large. It is a significant global event now, so there's about 140,000 sort of attendees. There were last year, and that's probably expected to grow again this year. The theme this year is all about unlocking innovation through the power of inclusion. That's something that speaks pretty closely to us here at Delta, being a disruptor and bringing innovative products to market. So the panel discussion is going to focus on a few key areas. But really what we want to focus on is a bit of a theme of walking the talk we feel like the time for talk is over. It's really about putting things into action now. So the hope is that you'll walk away from this with some real sort of practical key things that you can take away to your daily lives and obviously into the workplace to really drive innovation, but on a personal level to really look after your well-being as well and those around you. So what we're going to talk about, got a couple of key questions. We don't have a huge amount of time, so we really want to get, I guess, some meaningful discussions around a couple of key points. But I'll be asking the guys how they how it's best to build an inclusive culture and how that is really so vital in driving innovation, and how it's important obviously to the insurance sector as well. Some examples and experiences from each of them, who are obviously experts in their fields, and then, as I just mentioned, sort of practical strategies and tips and tricks that you guys can take away. So yeah, we're literally just going to crack straight into it. So the first question that I've got for you guys, so creating an inclusive culture that values diverse perspectives is essential for driving innovation. Can you, each of you, give examples on what that inclusivity and diversity can actually look like, and how have you seen it drive innovation? Margaret.
Shall I go first?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll go first. Look, it's so, like I said before, it's so wonderful to be here. I'm sure a few of you were probably going, why is the CEO and founder of a children's charity sitting up here in an insurance? And I'm very privileged that I actually get to sit on a number of boards and have a number of roles within the insurance industry. But when I really thought about that question in terms of what it means for all people, I couldn't avoid but come back to the statement as we are all humankind. And we should be human and kind to the very best of our ability. So in doing that, it's about, regardless of who walks through our door, regardless of who comes into our life, that we treat them with human and kindness. And being human and kind, neither of those are easy. To be human and be completely present to somebody with their diversity, with their difference, with whatever they bring, is to be present. And for many of us, that's very, very difficult, but it is so incredibly important. And to be kind is not as soft as what people think it is. Actually, to be kind actually has really clear boundaries to it in true kindness. So when I really deep dived into that, what it is about being human and kind to the very best of our ability. When I then drill it down to where's the innovation, how did that show up for me in terms of that really walking the talk and constantly being aware of that? You know, I run an organisation that supports children impacted by adversity and trauma. So children under 12, the children, their families, their communities that have been affected by abuse, neglect, domestic violence, etc. So they are a group that you need to be incredibly present to and be able to be incredibly supported to, and they need to be included in society. So when you look at trauma and the impact of trauma, the reality is we're all impacted by trauma and adversity at some point in our lives and at some point in our career. So when you think about children impacted by adversity and trauma and the exclusion sometimes for them, it's about being able to provide services that are actually at their ability for them to be able to communicate, which is why Kids Express uses all the creative modalities and trauma-informed care. When my career then took me into the insurance industry, I started to ask the question around trauma, but vicarious trauma. So knowing that the industry as a whole, you are dealing with trauma every single day. You are hearing people's stories. You are holding safe or creating a safe space and security for people in their most vulnerable time. So asking questions around what are we doing for our people that we're supporting them when they're hearing trauma after trauma after trauma story. So one of the things that I've seen really beautifully done is actually people putting in vicarious trauma training for their staff into their businesses, which has really created a really unique culture to their business as well, because then they are supported themselves, they are safe themselves, but they are able to really meet their community, their customers, their clients where they're at. So being human and kind is about meeting people where they're at. And we in this industry, if we don't understand what the impact of trauma is for our children, our families, our clients, whoever it for each other, then we are missing a major opportunity to be human and kind.
Yeah. I think it's just a lovely, simple message, right? Above all else, remember, to be human, right? To be present and to really be receptive to what that person might be going through.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Yeah.
So I've got a couple of messages when it comes to this topic of how to, I guess, innovate, having diversity, equity and inclusion in mind. And so there's two things I want to mention. First of all, I sort of trawled through all of the organisations that I work with and what good stuff they do, and what are one or two of the key things that they do that promote diversity, equity and inclusion whilst promoting innovation. So I'll mention that, and then I'll mention a psychological topic, because as a clinical psychologist, I cannot not, promote a psychological topic. So the first one is cross-sectional teams, or cross-functional teams, sorry. I see this time and time again. This is maybe kind of one of the hints to potentially take away. So what I see really successful organisations that do DE&I really well doing is they take seemingly unrelated teams. I don't know if you'll have that at Delta, perhaps you will. Seemingly teams that may not work together or don't work together usually, or may not traditionally work together or shouldn't work together, putting them together, and I'll give you some tips on how to do that hopefully at the end, and supporting them to work together. So we know that having cross-functional teams and having teams engage with each other works really well. It supports innovation. It helps people to get to know each other better. An array of things, but that's the first point. I really wanted to, when I trawled through the data around what some of the organisations are doing that I work with, having cross-functional teams continued to come up in the data that I was looking at. So I thought that was very interesting. The second thing that I want to mention, and this is the sort of psychological topic, is diversity, equity and inclusion can be catalysed by one thing, and that is psychological safety. So I don't know if any of you know what psychological safety is, and for those of you in the room or on screen or in the ether who perhaps don't know what it is, it was a term coined in the 1990s, I believe, by Amy Edmondson. It's the term that, what it means is that you have this, I guess, view or perception that you can be and act and say and speak authentically as you, without fear of reprimand, without fear of embarrassment, without fear that you will be ostracized by the group or by your cohort, by your team, by your workplace. And so if you think about it, if we don't have psych safety, we cannot, our DE&I initiatives will not, either they will not work or they certainly won't work as well. So I guess without harping on too much about psychological safety, I'd encourage all of you to go out of your way if you have time to think about, or maybe, Google, ChatGPT, some psychological safety strategies. But I guess from a very basic perspective, we're talking here about, leading authentically, asking the right questions. By the way, I'm giving you a couple of basics. There's so many, asking the right questions. So for example, not asking, how are you? I wish we could just take that out of our vocabularies. It is a very closed question. And what do we often say? Good, busy, some version of that. So asking open-ended questions, leading authentically, leaving your ego at the door, and viewing humans as humans, not just resources. So anyway, there are so many, but I would really encourage all of you to think about psychological safety as the floor, as the root of the house of diversity, equity and inclusion, because without that you kind of can't have the other. So those are just a couple of musings from me.
Okay, so just tracing back to that first point, so you're really talking about, I guess, breaking down silos in terms of that collaboration.
Big time, big time. Diversity of thought is everything. It will take your organisation forward, as Divin was saying. This is what we're seeing in the literature time and time again across all industries. Diversity of thought, as well as all of the other ways, but
Amazing. All right, thanks, Rona. Right, we'll go to the screen. So, Fiona.
Thanks. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how lived experience can actually drive innovation through creative service delivery, because having lived experience in the team can actually give different perspectives to approach and solve a problem, and that could lead to development of new products, services, processes, or even new businesses. So I wanted to give an example. So at the moment, there's actually a shortage of Auslan interpreters, which is Australian Sign Language interpreters around Australia because of the demand. And there's actually been a number of amazing deaf-run organisations that have opened, and they're seeking employees who use Auslan as their preferred mode of communication to be able to provide services to the deaf community directly without the need to engage an interpreter. And so that's actually helping to, I guess, create job opportunities for people who are deaf, but also bring in more direct services without a need for an interpreter. And just looking at this like more broadly for a larger organisation, looking to create employment opportunities for individuals that communicate in different ways and have their own lived experience of adjusting to changes in capacity could actually help organisations, particularly in the insurance industry, interact with a wider range of customers. So maybe considering that employment of individuals with lived experience of health issues, mental health challenges, disabilities could enhance the customer experience as, I guess, the people interacting with the customers will be more easily able to build rapport and better direct client support that might be useful for them in the community. So I really encourage organisations to broaden their recruitment network and be open to employing people, maybe transitioning back to work or inviting those with disabilities or medical conditions to apply for roles, because obviously you might then develop new ways of working based on an individual's lived experience that might help your business in ways that you don't actually expect.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, I think it's definitely like there's a good takeaway in and around recruitment there. But yeah, just to your last point there about how that can overall improve the customer journey and outcome as well, and that sort of traces back to your point of being human too, right? And recognising the needs of everyone that you serve. Awesome, thanks Fiona. Ryan.
Thank you, Heb. So here I think we're talking about a few things. We're talking about creating an inclusive culture, so a place people feel that they belong, a culture that values diverse perspectives, and a culture that drives innovation. Now, funnily enough, 90% of businesses say that they have this already. You look on their website and you look on their comms, but my bullshit detectors go off a little bit when I hear or see it, because a lot of the research kind of agrees with my bullshit detectors, but it also says, there was a report last year, I think it was McKinsey, 2022, found that only 36% of employees actually believe their organisations are doing an excellent job when it comes to fostering an inclusive culture. And I've worked with organisations who talk the talk, say the right thing, but maybe lean a little too heavily on optics and not reality. I've also worked with organisations who literally walk the walk, who are really world class in this area. They're a rarer breed, but they also reap the rarer benefits, innovation and the like, which when you look at things in the definition of innovation, very few organisations are innovative. And in my experience, three things are needed to achieve a successful culture here with these things considered. And they are: one, give your people a voice and listen well. Now, it can help to have an actual listening strategy, so a conscious and an ongoing effort to gain perspectives, feedback and ideas from your people, and then take action by removing barriers, by enabling improvements. The second is being intentional about diversity, equity and inclusion. So have an actual strategy for DE&I. And I'm not talking about a calendar full of dress-up days and morning teas. I'm talking about an actual strategy, one with objectives, with targets, with actions, with solid communication, a plan and a roadmap to help guide everything. And then the third thing is linking your DE&I strategy to your business strategy. Now, this here is about understanding maybe what the business's vision is, what the objectives are, what it's trying to achieve, and then using that to inform and influence the creation of a DE&I strategy. Because I think when it's used in this way, what you end up with is a strategy that actually supports the success of the business strategy and all stakeholders, and not something that's separate or is easily siloed. So I think when these three things are working together, they should be singing in unison: your listening strategy, your DE&I strategy, and your business strategy. And they help create a culture that listens well, takes action, collaborates effectively, shares ideas, drives innovation, and also improves the lives of the people and the business. And I've seen this happen before, and it is a beautiful thing.
Awesome. Okay. I love the fact that you were the first to swear too. That makes me feel much better.
Yeah. Probably not the last either. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah, I guess what I take away from that as well, I guess the time for virtue signaling is sort of done as well, right? You know, you mentioned that walk the talk, and that's something that we're really keen on, you know, that message filtering through from this session as well. Yeah, and I guess a strategy document or a document around diversity, equity and inclusion shouldn't be something that just sits in a drawer. It needs to be a live document and constantly revisited, and first and foremost in every business's mind, right? And I guess it's incumbent on us too to challenge those businesses that say they do something and in fact actually don't. So yeah, that's really interesting. So thanks, Ryan. Right, we'll just get straight on to the second question. And literally it's just going to be, I guess, an iteration of the first. But building on each of your previous answers, can you provide additional examples and practical tools that people can use in their daily jobs or lives to foster inclusion?
So I'm going again. I think I just want to build on some of it in terms of that, diversity of thought. Yep. The invitation for diversity of thought is so critical. And I know, again, coming from the third sector and also basically running a children's, not-for-profit organisation, the fact that organisations like Delta, like other insurance industries, actually invite me to a table because I have a different perspective. In all honesty, when that first happened to me, I was like, well, what do you want me for? And it was very much around that, because you think different. And there was an honour of thinking differently, and we need a different voice at our table. So there's two things in there. Is one, there's been invited. There's two, accepting the invitation. So I think that's really critically important. And then, and what Ryan was also saying around the, it's creating safety and that psychological safety, right? We all need to feel safe. To be our very best versions of ourselves, we need to feel safe, and we need to be able to contribute to and feel like we belong somewhere, that we belong to something that is meaningful, that is something we want to turn up to every single day. So when I think about what this actually looks like and how this feels and what the walking the talk actually really feels like, it feels like safety. It feels like belonging somewhere. It feels like somebody's got my back. Now, for me, or not just somebody's got my back, but I am safe enough here to bring all of me to work. So I think one of the gifts from, since 2020 has been, we're not siloed in our lives anymore. We have brought all ourselves to work. And I love that fact that when it's receptive, when it's truly there and authentically, again, as Ryan said, you can see that people bring their human selves to work, and that's where innovation absolutely thrives. I think when I, look at the different strategies and things that I have walked the talk and different things that I've done in my life, one of the things for me, I wear many hats. I work in a very complex, sometimes really destructive, distressing area, and I won't go into all my career and things that I've witnessed, but the risk of burnout is massive. I think you can be really isolated, and you can be pigeonholed within that environment of not coping. I think burnout is many, many things. Burnout to me is not just about workload, and we were actually having this conversation earlier today. It's not just about workload. It's about who do I feel safe with to say that I'm not coping, but who have I built as my village? So we talk about it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a community to have a thriving, healthy, conscious organisation that really walks the talk in this. So who do I have in the business and external to the business that is actually showing up for me and saying, hey, you're obsessing on the wrong things. You're doing too much here. You're actually taking on too much. It's not necessarily about workload. And when I've actually seen strategies around burnout put into place and it be upheld, it has worked phenomenally well. So that's something for me that I think is incredibly important and leads from the vicarious trauma that I was talking about. The other thing that occurs to me is when we get in our lives, even in diversity and inclusion as well, is we all get extraordinarily busy. And we all talk about, we all get extraordinarily busy, and we all talk about how busy we are, and it almost becomes a competition. And this is probably an odd way of looking at diversity and inclusion, but we all do it, right? And we put the pressure on people, and then we start isolating people as a result. So I have a capacity strategy that I use. And so my capacity strategy is I'm never fully booked. So I will intentionally look every single week where I have time. Because if you're going to be human and kind, you are always going to need time. Whether you are identified as a leader of a business or no matter who you are in a business, you are always going to need time to interact with people. So every given day, I will have time available should anybody come to me and need something. Whether that's, I need 5 minutes with you, I need you to make a decision, I always have time to do that. Now that time, so in a day, in a week, in a month, I will always have time. What that also does, it means that you can be completely present to people when they need. You go through a priority rating. Do I need to do that today? Can I do that later this week? But it gives you time, and therefore people are less rushed. And so therefore psychological safety, being human and kind, can exist. Now, if at the end of the week or the month I have more time, that time's for me.
Yep.
So that time then becomes, what do I need to do to be the best version of myself so that I ensure that I am creating the right safe environment for my team, that my team know that I am accessible, that my team know that I am also role modelling, walking the talk and investing in my own safety and security, my own emotional health and well-being. And so that might be that I do other things. That might mean I go to the beach for the afternoon, and I'm completely okay about that.
Yep.
And I think it's really important that we, when we look at diversity and inclusion, that we're actually looking at our mental health and well-being ourselves first.
Yep.
What do we do? How do we as leaders, or how do we, working with our colleagues, make sure that we are not pushing people away and saying, I just don't have time for you.
Yep.
So it's actually taking those strategies on and actually embedding them deeply into your life so that you can be the best version of yourself. You can be present for people and you can be human and kind. That will actually create a different society, I believe.
Love
Yeah,
that.
wow.
Love
Okay.
that.
So I'm going to get some time management tips from you afterwards as well.
Sure.
Maybe you can run a separate session on that.
Yeah, don't worry, Dan. It's
But I
okay.
guess, yeah, so the real key, like, so look after yourself so you can look after those around you, right?
Well, yeah, because
then,
otherwise when you look at, exclusion, where the gaps exist, it's because people push people away. And so we've got to bring people close. We've got to meet people where they're at when they come into our doors, regardless of what they're experiencing.
Yep.
Make that time for them to be present, but we can only do that when we're conscious of it.
Yep. Yeah,
I
fantastic.
love that.
Yeah.
I actually, perhaps we're cut from the same cloth or in a
I
very
think
similar industry, but
Yeah.
I do the exact same thing, and I didn't know other people were doing it, but I create a lot of time in my
Yeah.
week. I need expansiveness, and especially on a Friday when crises tend to happen. So usually Friday's the day for admin and whatever else comes up. But anyway, great tip. I agree with that completely. That's fantastic. So again, I trawled through my clients and was wondering what are some of the things that they do that not only enhance diversity, equity and inclusion, but enhance innovation. And I've got some really potentially quite interesting things that you could try, and all the people on the screen could try as well. So, and mine are just kind of little tidbits, so I hope this is, I hope they're helpful. So the first thing that I've seen work really well, and in the, I guess in the essence of, creating these cross-functional teams, having mentoring or coaching that works the traditional way and the reverse way. So I'll take you through it in a second. So mentoring and coaching is traditionally done with a more senior person, mentoring or coaching a more junior person. I think we would probably agree with that. And so first and foremost, that works really, really well, just standard. And I would encourage if you do that in here, to do that perhaps via a walk, mentor walks. I don't know if any of you have ever heard about that. There's a mentor walks international program actually. And encourage individuals or senior individuals to mentor younger individuals who perhaps would not have access to that senior individual usually or traditionally. But I'd like for you to just flip the script for a second and do reverse mentoring. So what we know is that we've got a whole generation of humans coming into our workplaces who have incredible knowledge, incredible resources, and just a wealth of expertise that some of us older and much, much older individuals do not have. And so I'd really encourage you to do reverse mentoring. I've seen it be incredibly successful in many of the organizations I work with. So where you get a more younger or junior staff member coaching a more senior staff member. So those are a couple of things there. Coffees. So many of us drink coffee, maybe too much, but innovation coffee connections. So what I see a lot of organizations doing, and we've done this in my organization too, is people who, again, would perhaps not work together. What you do is you sort of, we call it coffee roulette or any type of roulette, you can call it whatever you want, but coffee roulette or lunch roulette, where you sort of connect people that would usually not be connected, support them to go out and grab a coffee together, maybe for half an hour, connect, of course, build a relationship, but you can also add an innovative component to it. And I've seen this done really well in organizations where they get given perhaps a question or a few questions, such as, I wonder if, I wonder how, something really open, again, open-ended, not closed-ended, where there's perhaps a problem in the organization or a solution that, needs to be found, and you ask a very general open question, and the two people who are doing the coffee roulette or lunch roulette attempt to answer that question together with their completely diverse perspectives. So from two completely different teams who you would think would never get along or would never work together in that way, wonderful things happen. We actually do see this happening in organizations currently. So those are a couple of things. Something that the organization 3M, the sticky, 3M, they do an incredible thing. I actually wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. Constructive daydreaming. Now, I don't do this myself, but I thought this was fantastic, as in I don't do it with my organization. I actually do this myself. They implement, I think, 15% or 10% of their work week to constructive daydreaming. I don't think that's doable for most organizations to give 10% of their time to constructive daydreaming. But I do think in the spirit of expansiveness, the reality is that we are so busy. Our brains are in fight, flight, freeze, fawn, very much of the time. We don't need to get into psychology too much, but our cortisol, adrenaline, especially when we are in fight, flight, freeze, or when we've got a bit too much cortisol, a bit too much adrenaline, what we actually know is that the expansiveness that we feel is not there. It actually narrows. Our vision narrows to provide very few solutions as opposed to expansive solutions. We don't see the wood for the trees. So I guess having time that you can perhaps carve out into your diary, and it might be for innovation. It might be a team innovation time where it's just blue sky thinking. But essentially the message here is to give yourself time, give your teams time, give your people time to create the space for innovation. Innovation doesn't just happen, and it certainly doesn't happen under a pressure cooker. Sometimes it does, very rarely. Sometimes when people are forced to answer some questions, then it does happen, but mainly it requires time and expansiveness. So a couple of bits there for you, but I guess the main message being creating time to be able to do this stuff.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
that's really the mentoring is something that we've been doing here for a while, and that has been really powerful. But I think the thing that we could probably do, it has been sort of top down. So flipping that on its head is definitely a key takeaway for something that we could do as a business. But yeah, that blue sky thinking is, I think is so important too, right? We do get so busy being busy. But if you do want to drive innovation and think laterally, well, you need time, right? And if you can commit to that weekly or monthly or whatever it is, all the better. So that's awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Rona. Back to the screens. So Fiona, I'd love to hear what you've got to say.
Thanks. So I'm going to just focus on 3 key challenges for businesses and maybe some practical solutions when looking at inclusion and diversity. So one is around leadership support. So it's really important that leaders can lead by example in encouraging conversations around reasonable adjustment, supporting flexible work arrangement, and speaking about, I guess, how they make adjustment to their own day and being really vulnerable and open about their own experiences and sharing this, because that can create a workplace where people feel safe to communicate and know that they'll be listened to and that it's someone that also understands. So from my own personal perspective, I share with my team how I need to structure my day to manage my own disability and fatigue level, why I need to work part-time, the technology I use for my deafness. And even in this conversation now, I'm using live caption so that I can kind of understand what everyone's saying. And I've got my notes in front of me because I can't retain information. So by being able to be vulnerable and open and share your own experiences, I think that creates that safe work environment where people are comfortable coming and speaking to their managers as well. So it's really easy to have policies in place, but what we really need is then how do we implement those policies in practice and have practical tools to support people in the workplace. So we've worked with our own employees and with other workplaces to implement what we call reasonable adjustment plans or workplace management plan, and really help to facilitate conversations between employees and their managers on how the individual can be best supported in the workplace, and just looking at how can we tailor the role to suit the individual while also keeping business needs and objectives in mind. So just as a really simple example, if an individual takes medication that maybe impacts on their sleep and energy and the time of day where they're most effective, creating a plan where they can work flexibly and maybe spread their time over the day or start later. As long as the work gets done, how it gets done, I guess doesn't really matter. So we have that in our own team as well. And so I guess as long as the client needs get met, it doesn't really matter how that happened. Another challenge that comes up is, I guess, a lack of awareness and understanding. There's often perceived barriers and biases and limited awarenesses of the support that can be available for people. So in Australia, we have Job Access, which is a government-funded program to support individuals in the workplace. So there's an individual, it's actually a really good example. There's an individual that we're supporting recently in regard to a workplace injury, but the barrier to finding employment is not the workplace injury, it's actually the disability. So she's profoundly deaf as well, participated in a really rigorous recruitment process over a 6-month period with a really large organisation, disclosed her disability from the very beginning, from the application, the job advertisement, advertised that they encourage people with disability to apply and be really open about it. Got to the very, very final stage of being about to be made an offer, and then received an email from HR saying, because you're not able to use the phone, we actually can't proceed with the job offer. So I'm currently really advocating for this individual because the only thing they can't do is talk on the phone, but there's 5 other communication avenues that are listed, and there's a lot of people that contact this organisation that can't use the phone. So it's actually a strength to have someone where their key strength is the other communication avenues. And I think what I really wanted to highlight is that this situation is happening every day, where there's almost a tokenistic approach to encouraging applicants from different backgrounds, different disabilities to apply for roles, but then there's not that time taken to look at reasonable adjustments and just having a conversation around, well, how could you do the role? What are your strengths? And it's happening every day. So just being aware of this, even in our communication, in our own recruitment strategies, look at the solution, because most people have been managing themselves, managing their disabilities their whole lives. So they can often tell you the solution without needing to do too much about it. And then the final, well, there's a lot of barriers, but this is the one I'll talk about that's already come up previously, is, I guess, around limited resources and time and red tape. So I guess smaller businesses might struggle with resources such as training programs, or I guess the additional supports and time that needs to be invested into people. But larger businesses, I guess, have lots of layers of management approvals and red tape sometimes that needs to get through to make something really happen on the ground. So just practical takeaways. So what we do in our team, so we've actually engaged with Job Access, and they've come in to address like accessibility needs, technology needs, communication needs. And it's meant that we've put in place adjustments like automatic doors, access to Auslan interpreters, safety and communication technology. And we were doing all of this for our employees, but the added benefit has actually been that our workplace and our company and our business is actually much more accessible to our clients now as well. So it's, I guess by being flexible and open and supporting your employee, it can actually mean that you can support more people, like I guess in the insurance industry or in your claimant, with your claimants, anything like that. So with our work with different insurance companies and large organisations, we've helped to support individuals that are adjusting to disability or adjusting to ill health, and working to have those conversations with employers regarding their needs in the workplace and how they can be met. So trying to remove the fear and helping to show what's possible, and having those conversations are really, really important. So I think one thing to avoid is just avoid treating diversity and inclusion as a tick box exercise. Actually really really believe in what you're doing, and just look at the opportunities that are available, because you won't know where it can lead, and there could be new businesses that arise out of it, or new business or service streams. So just be open is, I guess, where I'm coming from and what I'd like to share.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic, Fiona. I guess my question is, like, I mean, obviously you're in Australia there, and you talk about, I guess, the bodies that you work with there that sort of provide resource and sort of education and around sort of employing people with disability. But is there sort of more of a global sort of a body, or like, for businesses that are sort of, obviously the people that are attending this online, resources out there as well that people can tap into?
There's not necessarily a global body that I'm aware of that would provide funding or resources, but I think different countries do have their own, I guess, other bodies or other avenues of funding or grants that people can access. I mean, I can talk about it from the Australian perspective, but globally, I would imagine that there are other disability organisations that can help to support in this space. I don't know if anyone else on the panel is aware in other countries of other support.
Yeah, it's probably a call to action for us, right? So we can, start to look into that as well. So thanks for that, Fiona. The time's just popped up, so I'll pass over to you now, Ryan.
Awesome, thank you. I'm loving these practical tips and experiences that are being shared. I think they're helpful both personally and also maybe practices to introduce in our workplaces. I think I do reverse mentoring already with my 5-year-old. She's had a genius piece of coaching advice for me recently. She said if I wanted to see how bald I was getting, I just had to look up. I just had to look up and see. So that's, there you go. You can take that tip with you as well. I spend a lot of my time on organisational and cultural strategy. So to expand on this question, I think it's important to take a look at what a really good diversity, equity and inclusion strategy is, and also what impacts it. And in my experience, a best practice strategy is one that's integrated into all aspects of the organisation. So at its core, it's not only about ticking boxes or meeting regulatory requirements, as Fiona says, it's about creating a workplace where everyone feels that they can belong, can thrive, and can contribute to the success of the organisation. Now, there are a number of things that directly impact how people experience this in organisations, and mostly it's to do with their experience with leadership, with recruitment and hiring, training and development, policies and procedures, the culture that they're in, and also how feedback and communication is done. In my experience, and I've studied this a lot over the years, the orgs who do really stand out have two very important characteristics. One, they give a shit, and two, they take action. So when an organisation genuinely cares about something and they focus on taking action, shit gets done. We all know this. We've seen it happen in our own organisations, maybe when a new strategy gets announced, or when a vision or a roadmap is delivered, when a new product is about to be launched. Regardless of how complex or ambitious the big, hairy, audacious goal is, mountains get moved, resources get allocated, plans are drawn, announcements are made, and shit gets done. And in the D&I space, I look at things that are sometimes, I'd say, relatively simple to do. Things conceptually or things practically, like paying people fairly, hiring people on merit, or making sure that 90% of decisions aren't made or governed by a small group of people of the same gender, age, and race, who very rarely reflect the employee or customer base. And let's be honest, if companies really cared and focused on real action, and I mean real action, not pretend ones like by 2150 we'll fix the gender pay gap, then a lot of this stuff would be fixed. However, other than giving a shit and taking action, there are some other more practical characteristics my research of best practice strategies. And the companies I see that are doing really well make sure that they have an integrated strategy, like I said, one that aligns with the overall business strategy, goals, metrics, accountability, the whole thing. And they prioritize diversity at all levels, so entry level to board of directors. They properly invest in training, so they put the money where their mouth is and identify what skills need to be improved or where the gaps are for managers, for employees, for executives, the whole shebang. They use and collect data, or they collect and use data and metrics to consistently track progress and identify areas for improvement. And that goes beyond just doing a once a year engagement survey. That's consistently having a good approach to listening. They regularly review the employee experience and the life cycle to look for ways to make things better, fairer, and more inclusive. And of course, most importantly, they hold leadership accountable. This can include setting goals or metrics, or actually tying executive compensation to progress in these areas. If you want to see stuff get done, that's how you do it. I know this stuff can be a little bit overwhelming. When I'm starting out with an organization, I'll try and make it simple, and I'll give them 3 things to do and 3 things not to do. So if you're in the process right now of reviewing or changing or creating a best practice strategy, then here's some practical next steps for you. So the 3 things to do, the first is to review your current state. So look inside and look outside of your organization and use that to understand where you're at, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and they'll help you define your challenges and your opportunities. For example, is it bias and discrimination? Is it representation? Is it retention of your diverse employees? Is it diversity in leadership? Or do you have challenges with generational differences, supplier diversity, legal and compliance issues? It could be anything, but if you don't study your environment, you don't know, and you end up with a blanket solution or something that has low or no impact. Now, number 2 is to try and make objectives. So use the info that you now have to work out your desired state. So you know where you're at, where should you be, and then write them down. Do you want to focus on implementing accountability measures? Do you want to focus on enhancing employee engagement, reducing bias and discrimination? I don't know, but every business is different. But you should be in a spot to pick out your key focus areas and also decide on what you want to achieve. Having objectives gives you structure and focus, and you can't have a strategy without them. Number 3 thing is to make a plan. So it's all good, like you said, having a strategy and putting it in a drawer and going back and checking it every 3 years, but you have to have a plan to support it. So get the commitment you need, develop the strategy and all the actions to support its success. That's easy. So that was the 3 things to do. Here's the 3 things to avoid doing. The number 1 thing is ignoring or not using data. So I'm surprised at how often this is missed, but without data, you don't have a benchmark to understand where you're at. It's impossible to measure progress, to properly allocate resources, or to hold anyone account to stuff that's being done or not being done. This halts a lot of progress and impacts many organizations. There was a report again by Mercer last year, and that found that 55% of organizations don't even measure the impact of the D&I initiatives, which is a big mistake. So they do them, but then don't know if they land or if they don't. So the next thing to avoid doing is making D&I just a P&C or a HR thing. So culture change requires leadership from the top and everywhere else. If inclusion is the responsibility of only one department, then what you're doing is not only ironic, it's going to be very limited. D&I needs to be a shared thing. It needs to be inclusive, and that includes the strategy. It needs strong direction from leadership, and everyone needs to be able to contribute in some way. And lastly, you want to avoid making it more complex than what it needs to be. Stuff like heavy jargon, heavy info, lots of terminology, too much stuff, too much rules, too much things you can do, what you can't do, too many actions. Sometimes I think we need to take a breath and remind ourselves that when we make things complex, we actually make them exclusive, which is the opposite of inclusive. So complexity creates communication barriers, causes confusion, often leads to resistance and disconnect. Now, we've seen this play out socially, politically, lots of times. Right now, we're seeing it happening live in Australia with The Voice. Making things simple is making things accessible and clear, which is what you need for behavior change in wide and diverse audiences. So, okay, there you have it. If you're to review where you're at, make some objectives and a plan, you're laughing. Just be sure to use data, involve the whole business, and make sure what you're doing is simple and engaging.
Yeah, so really nice, clear sort of, I guess, messages there, and yeah, easy to follow points. Just a question in and around, I guess, taking stock and putting those objectives into place. And would you recommend like a frequency for businesses in terms of how often they look at it? And you spoke about an engagement survey as well. Is an annual survey sufficient, or in terms of the content for that survey as well, to make it sort of plain English and ensuring that it's appealing to everyone? Should everyone have a bit of an input as to what's actually going out in that survey as well? Or just interested.
I deal with this one an awful lot. So usually the concern is survey fatigue. When action happens, people aren't fatigued giving back feedback because they see that shit happens, shit gets done. Like I'd answer a survey every week if I knew it was making my workplace better. So in terms of a rule of thumb or how often should companies be listening, I'd say you should be listening every day. It just depends on how you're collecting that data, how you're using it, and what you're doing as a result. A yearly engagement survey could be really practical. The downsides of it usually takes about 3 months to analyze and work out what to do with the results. So I do like having a better frequency around collecting information if it's important. There are different, more clever ways to do that. You could sample size your question set. You can randomize the what questions go out to who and when, so people get exposed to different questions throughout the year, and you're constantly collecting data. But I think if you're serious about doing things, you should really have a strong listening strategy. And it's not always about surveys. It could be about focus groups, about meeting with people, about polling. When you've got company announcements, when you're doing live events, it's gathering sentiment. If you have an internal communication feed, it's about asking questions. If you want answers, you want responses. Your people need to see that you're doing stuff with it at the end of the day, and you quickly learn how often that you need to survey people when you're analysing the feedback.
Awesome. All right. I think we're sort of running pretty close to time. We've got about 8 minutes left, so I just want to see if there is any questions from those that are attending online. Right, we have got a question here, and this one's for Margot.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You're in the hot seat. So what are your thoughts on Dr. Gabor-Mate's observation of childhood trauma effects on adult life, where he attributes chronic mental and physical illnesses as a response to trauma?
Oh, that is such a good question. It's so up my...
It's quite tongue-flying.
No, it is quite... I could just throw back to you, Dan, and see if you can answer.
I think we're out of time. Sorry.
Yeah. Look, ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences, is a known study that was done in 1998 about the impact on adversity and trauma in childhood and the impacts in adulthood. Those impacts are significant. So when we look at adverse childhood experiences, we are talking about parental separation, we are talking about environmental adversity, so you would put floods, fires, COVID into that. You're looking at abuse, neglect, etc. So there's a comprehensive list of what those deemed childhood adversities actually are. Once you get over 4, the stats are staggering. So if you experience 4 or more of those childhood adversity experiences, particularly when you're under 12, there are stats like you are 12 times more likely to attempt to take your life. There is certain physical conditions in the physical illness, so you are 4.5 times more likely to get certain cancers. You are 4.5 times more likely to get certain heart disease. So we know that, and this is where I get really passionate about when we look at mental health and we look at emotional well-being, and we keep putting essentially the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. So we focus on young people and we focus on adults, where we can significantly change that, as what Dr. Gabor talks about all the time, is we actually need to have an early intervention and prevention strategy. Since, in terms of my role, it's only now that we can put children and mental health in the same sentence. Prior to 2020, people would say, oh, I feel really uncomfortable about that. Don't we just wait and see if there is a problem later in life? And all the evidence is we absolutely know, both from a chronic illness, a physical illness, but also a mental health, it is going to dramatically impact. So we do need to have that early intervention. And also, again, the inclusion part is what is right for children in terms of supporting them is not necessarily right for young people or adults. So Kids Express, we use all the creative modalities because that is a child's language. And then we follow the child into adolescence and then also support the caregiving community. So yeah, it absolutely does. And yet, oddly, we continue to ignore childhood as being part of the solution to the mental health, the physical illnesses, the chronic illnesses within adolescents and adults. So I'm really passionate about that. Very passionate about that.
Yeah, great. Okay. Thanks, Margot. Any other questions? We've got a couple of minutes, possibly. No? Okay. So one question maybe I've just got for you, Raina, in terms of what I guess the insurance industry can do in terms of bringing people into it and getting DE&I right. Is there any sort of things that you could, how we can really promote, I guess, the industry from that perspective?
I did think about this because we were thinking perhaps that we might talk about this, and I do think putting DE&I, like marketing and putting DE&I front and center of everything you do, as Ryan was saying, in terms of strategy, in terms of what you do, in terms of how you operate, and advertising maybe makes it sound a little bit odd, but advertising that and having people understand that insurance is much more than just, I won't say some of the words that are associated with insurance, but you know, when you think about insurance sometimes, you have some thoughts, but advertising and marketing and showing the youthful, innovative way that it really can be. Since working with Delta, and I've been working with Delta now for a couple of years and a couple of other insurance, I'm shocked by how amazing the industry actually can be and is, just like you were saying at the beginning. And so I think advertising and marketing, really what it is, and being upfront about what you are doing in the DE&I space, as opposed to just speaking about it. So, and I think representation matters in all ways, and again, in the advertising and marketing material or whatever it is that you do, showing the representative cohorts that really do exist within the insurance industry, and the diversity of thought and diversity in every aspect, all the ways that diversity means diversity. So I guess really putting it front and center, because I feel like there's an element of, especially in insurance, still holding back when it comes to this. So putting it front and center, I think in many ways would be very helpful if I was to be coming into the industry for the first time. So,
yeah. Be proud.
Be proud, yeah.
Because
it's actually quite amazing. It's not at all what I thought.
Yeah. Fantastic. Right, so I think that's pretty much us done. So just a huge amount of thanks to you, Margot and Raina, and Fiona and Ryan. I think some really, really great stuff for us all to take away. Hopefully you all agree. And I just want to extend a big thank you to Cedric Australia, who partnered with us to bring this event to life. So with that, I think we're going to bring it to a close. So thanks very much for attending, and those that were attending online.
Why would I encourage other senior leaders to become a reverse mentee? I think because the process will challenge, it'll take people out of their comfort zones. It will also be incredibly rewarding.
I believe that joining this new initiative will enrich our day-to-day and provide us with new perspective on the current work environment.
I also encourage a lot junior members to sign up as a reverse mentor. We need them. We need to learn from them how they think about the world, how they think about the future. So it's very important, this interaction between generations.